So we'll start with cargo numbers. Cargo numbers in January came in. If you guys remember last year's year end, we ended up the year at an all-time high, 3.4 billion pounds of landed weight, up 25% year over year. January of 2022 continued more on the same growth. We're 25% up of our 21 numbers for January. 277 million pounds of landed weight. That just continues the growth going forward with air cargo. There was an announcement, I'm sure everyone was aware, in early February. Emirates has set up Rockford as a new station as well. That's part of our growth going forward for the month. But getting Emirates to set up as a station in Rockford was about a year-long discussion back and forth with them to get them to establish that and sell the route into Rockford. So that was a very, very large undertaking, and you have to thank Emory Air for really providing that service and growing with us to be able to meet the needs of Emirates. Emirates is a carrier that to have them set up a station in Rockford from the standards that they require is quite an accomplishment to pull that off, because their base standards are extremely high and their service standards are pretty immense. But with that, as we go forward, we also had a couple of new visitors. Old visitors, but new recently. The Antonov 124s came in again. This was actually a contract through DB Schenker. DB Schenker is one of our tenants. That's actually going to be our main tenant in Building 2 that'll open up in April. But Schenker had two Antonov 124s come in with auto parts, all based for Detroit. It was flown into Rockford instead of Detroit. Made more sense for them to come here just because of the proximity and easy use, and then the truck drive from Rockford to Detroit just was more economical for them as well. Then on top of that, there was another visitor. The Aleutian 76 was another specialized air cargo, heavy lifted cargo aircraft. That came in with 3 serial machines for the General Mills plant in Belvedere. So kind of unique freight over those last couple weeks. But on the passenger side, we continue to see kind of a return to normal. We see in January of 2022, we were 60% up of our 21 numbers, and essentially when you compare Allegiant to Allegiant year over year, we had 7 additional flights this year versus last year, so we had additional seats in market. I also, with the passenger side, I spent last week down in San Antonio meeting with 6 different air carriers about new routes for Rockford. Very, very positive meetings with 5 out of the 6, and the 6th was with Allegiant, very standard meeting. We met with them. I would say it was just about 3 months prior, which wasn't anything new. It was a very good meeting, but wasn't anything new out of that meeting. But very positive meeting, follow-ups to all those carriers. And actually 2 of the carriers really were interested in Rockford, not just from a passenger standpoint, but also from a cargo standpoint. These carriers are actually looking at Rockford as the cargo to secure the flight, the passenger would be an added benefit. So it's kind of weird to see cargo open up doors for passenger opportunities, but it is. So it's definitely was very, very interesting week with that. Then, just today, just want to thank the maintenance ops guys. I mean, they're going to be out tonight for quite a few hours dealing with this snow we got going. But it's right during a UPS sort, which is going to be very challenging. But with the new equipment we have that we purchased earlier this year or last year, it'll be something that very beneficial. We had a discussion with Matt Zinke, our maintenance manager, and Tad Varney, our assistant maintenance manager, and just given the additional equipment, the ability of that equipment, we're able to get guys out here upwards of 12 hours sooner than we have in years past. When we wrap up a project or a storm alarm, we're able to start basically at Amazon, roll a piece of equipment, and clean up the rest of the airport about 12 hours faster than we ever have before. So it's been very good to get guys out of here a lot sooner than we've seen in the past.
As noted last week, Shelley's at a training session right now with Tracy, so they're not here. I would just, this week has been really spent primarily on real estate and construction, and we are anticipating building 2 opening somewhere between March 15th and April 1st. So other than all the work that time we've been spending with developers and builders and contractors, that's pretty much been the whole week. That's all. Anybody got anything else? That's it, sir.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to old business. Any old business? Hearing none. New business? Hearing none. Public comment? The board welcomes public comment, but will only receive public comment on matters pertaining to the airport. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. The board will not respond to questions or comments made during the public comment section of the meeting. If a response is warranted, staff will respond to the speaker in the days following the meeting, providing the speaker is provided an email address on form. There will be a limit of 5 speakers, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The first person we're going to call in this evening hails from Evanston, Illinois, and that would be James Hansen. Would you step forward and speak to us if you'd like?
May I take this off?
Sure.
Speaking? Okay, thank you. Good evening. Essentially, I wanted to say that I think that the airport can expand successfully and still preserve the roughly 15 acres that still exist at the Bell Bowl Prairie. And sure, it'll take some reimagining of the original plans, but I think by doing so, Chicago Rockford International Airport can be a model for good, sensible development, where you have growth and green. And I know you can do it. And I know also in some discussions I've had with people at Natural Land Institute, that they do have engineers who are knowledgeable in this kind of engineering and design. And nobody wants to destroy the priceless treasure, and Bell Bowl is that. It's not only a ecological gem, but it's also part of, I think, of the legacy and cultural history of the Rock River area in the region. And it's more than just, I think, a last refuge for some very rare plants, animals, and insects, including the rusty-patched bumblebee, which is a federally endangered species. Everybody here, I think, loves the Rock River Valley. I know it's one of my favorite places in all the country, not just in Illinois. I've been coming out here for over 25 years to see some of the wonders of the area. You know, it's Harlan Hills, you know, Castle Rock is a little further west. There's some Natural Land Institute places, Pecatonica and whatnot. And I was just astonished last spring when I came out here to Bell Bowl. I hadn't heard about it. And I was wandering around all over northern Illinois with a friend of mine looking for a particularly uncommon plant, Carolina anemone. Talked to my friend Ed, he's worked for Natural Lands. He said, "Oh, it's at Bell Bowl." I said, "Bell what?" He said, "Oh yeah, at Rockford International Airport." We came out here, me and 2 friends of mine, last late April, early May. Sure enough, we found it, along with a whole assemblage of beautiful, uncommon, rare plants. And we were also hearing all the grassland birds, the meadowlarks, the grasshopper sparrows, things that you don't find in other places. And so I'm just advocating that you consider modifying your plan and save this priceless artifact, you know, that's a living artifact. It's not just some stuffed thing in a display case. And you've got it right here. And I know you can do it. It just takes the will and maybe a little imagination, a little extra effort. So I think my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you. I'm also going to keep my mask off.
Sure.
It makes me feel like I'm local. I happen to be the pastor of Maine Lutheran Church here in Rockford. Been here 2 years. And I'm not going to share all the information. You know the information about Bell Bowl Prairie. People do that. What I came to say tonight, this afternoon, is been really disappointed in the board. Disappointed in your lack of vision. A vision that could include both economic development and ecological preservation. I mean, I've been really surprised because a forest preserve is one of the best ones I've seen in the state of Illinois. And one of their emphases is making sure to provide for environmental protection. They've even got an ecological restoration thing going on. We have Summers and Dells with their environmental education. So that value of preserving the ecology and being attentive to the land, not just as something blank, but as something that has value. And I'm disappointed that you didn't initially, whenever this was conceived of, begin to think, how can we put them both together? And not just focus solely on the economic development, which is what seems to be going on. I've also been disappointed in the lack of transparency, in that nobody seems to be able to say when the decision was made to do this expansion. And I see on your agenda, you're going to be voting on doing some things. There's going to be spending money, spending lots of money. This is a big project and a great deal for this community and for the whole Midwest. When was the decision made? How was the decision made? So that did you have input from other people besides just a small, narrow group of people? I don't know. Nobody seems to be able to say. And I've been really disappointed in the lack of communication. The lack of communication in the last 4 months since this became an issue, it feels like you built a wall between you and anybody else, and not interested in hearing those conversations and maybe say, yeah, maybe we didn't include all the vision that could be possible in this community. So we include all of our values so that we can do the economic development that this area desperately needs, but also to honor this ancient prairie. There isn't much left of it. And this is a great value and enriches all of our lives. We're called the stewardship. That is to steward the creation, to enhance life for human beings and other creatures with which we share this earth, and to do the best we can. So I think you could have done better at the beginning. I think you should have done better at the beginning. But the good news is, I think you could still do better. You have an executive session. You could take part of that executive session and start talking about who do we need to communicate. Thank you, thanks.
Next, Mr. Tim Schaefer.
Yes, sir, I have to take offense to something you just said. You said that you appreciate hearing from people from the public. I brought an issue up to the board, Mr. Dunn, a serious issue, and I thought should have been took with consideration. I didn't say it in any derogatory way, but just an issue that people there may not know about happened at that time. Mr. Dunn took it upon himself to attack me personally, make some statements that affect my character, my job employment here, trying to belittle that. I'll leave that for another day. We'll probably have to address this down the road, but I've been sending you guys a lot of information. Miss West, for some reason, I can't get to you when I send something. I don't know if I'm blocked personally or everybody's blocked, but if you're not included on something, I apologize. I think Mr. Agnew, same way. For some reason, you don't have an email on there. But getting back to our concerns, which we've been bringing up a lot about over the last several months, and the progression of that, where it first started out, the airport board tried to say it never happened, minimized a lot of the stuff. I think we've kind of proven our case over time. We've been asking for medical monitoring to meet with you guys. It just falls on deaf ears. The only comment I heard back of all the issues with cancer and everything is Mr. Dunn took time to want to attack me personally for something he didn't like I said, which I don't even know if he was here at that time, which is why I was trying to inform him. I provide a lot of news articles to let people know why I was saying what I did. if you want me to address that further, I need a little more time, but when I send you stuff, I hope you guys kind of look at that, just don't put it in the bin, because I think there's serious issues in there. Now, we went to the board chamber meeting in Miss Lamia, and you basically said that you owe your position to Mr. Dunn. How can, like, when it comes to the civility issue, I asked the board to look at, because he definitely violated section 4 of the civility policy that was put in place because of him. If he's the reason you're on that board, which you publicly stated, then you have to take yourself out of this mixture. But the board, I think, something you have to remember, Wilson Lowry, he was a board member years ago, and I asked him, I said, how do you get on the board, Mr. Lowry? It's not a elected position or anything. He told me if you throw enough money around into the circles of the people that are running for office, you get rewarded with position. I'm not trying to belittle anybody there, because I know you guys have great credentials. I was just an old cop, just an old fireman. I'm not, but we brought some serious issues to you, and I think you can at least take a little time to meet with us. It's not that hard of a thing, and you're gonna spend $36,000. I think you're gonna go on tonight for another ad campaign for media about how great the airport's going. People understand how great the airport's going. Spend that money for a medical monitoring program. It could go a long way. Mr. Don, I just looked at your package. You make about $270,000 a year. I don't fault nobody for that. When I started here, I was the lowest paid guy at $12 grand. Mr. Grady had almost 30 years in. He made $55,000. I can guarantee you that a lot has changed in that time period. And myself, I don't fault anybody for that, but I do think an elected board would have a lot more responsibility. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The Evanston contingent, Julian Neece. Excuse me, Ross.
My name is Jillian Neece, and I was born and raised in the Rockford area. I have a bachelor's degree in plant biology and experience working in prairies and with bumblebees. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to comment on the lack of transparency and cooperation by the Greater Rockford Airport Authority throughout the entire planning and construction process of this expansion. How much time, money, and resources have been wasted on lawyers, postponed construction, and additional security at the Prairie. By not providing clear expansion plans during the brief public comment period in 2019 or throughout the entire expansion project, you've poorly represented the interests of the community that you serve here in Winnebago County. As the Board of Commissioners, your job is to oversee the management of the airport. As a locally appointed oversight body, what is your purpose if not to provide accountability for the management of this project and the airport? It's frankly bad governance to have such an incredible lack of transparency and open communication. I'll remind you that the destruction of Bell Bowl Prairie before consultation ends is against the law. This violation of the law would fall on your shoulders, and you would have an obligation to your constituents that you serve to make sure that this does not happen. As a government entity supported by our tax dollars, you have a duty to the people of the Rockford area to enter a dialogue with us about this planned expansion and the subsequent destruction of Bell Bowl Prairie. Why is it easier for me to have a discussion with state or federal agencies like the FFA, IDNR, or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service than it is for me to receive a response from my locally appointed airport officials? You are not communicating with the people of Rockford, or the almost 90,000 people who have signed a petition to save this prairie. You are not being transparent with us, and you are causing unnecessary division among the people of the Rockford area. Mr. Doug, please look at me as I'm talking to you.
Yes.
It is time to do the job that you were appointed to do. It is time to hold airport officials accountable for this lack of public communication. There's frankly no need for this community division and for the conflict that has been created by the unwillingness of this airport management team to have an open and honest dialogue with the public and with the citizens of Winnebago County. Thank you.
Judy, that's you.
Judy Pollack from Evanston.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Judy Pollack. I'm the president of the Chicago Audubon Society, which is a chapter of the National Audubon Society. And actually, my dad was an operations manager at LaGuardia Airport in New York, so it's kind of interesting for me to be back here at an airport meeting. So the Chicago Audubon is one of many, many groups in the state that are really concerned about this Bell Bowl Prairie issue. You know, the destruction of this gravel hill prairie, it would take out a third of the existing gravel hill prairies in the state. And so it's an issue that really has statewide importance. And many, many conservation organizations are watching very closely and hoping that you can find a better solution than destroying the prairie. It's, you know, as I said, one of the last remaining gravel prairies in the state of Illinois. And the decision that you have, or that you're gonna take, has a tremendous statewide impact on our natural resources. The plants, I think, the soils, the microorganisms, you know, all of that makes this a very, very special piece of land. It's developed over many tens of thousands of years, as I'm sure you know, and it can't be replaced. It's a sad duty to have to come here and speak about saving this piece of land. You know, our changing climate really tells us that we have to start doing some things differently. And I think that we're all hoping that this will be the beginning of us really just approaching these things quite differently. I want to just speak a little bit about the birds, you know, because I'm from the Audubon Society. Although I think that the plants and the insects really have the greatest biodiversity importance. The birds on the site are also really important. Things like willow flycatcher, meadowlark, stick thistle, brown thrasher, birds that you really only find in natural areas are present during the nesting season at the Bell Bowl Prairie. And I know that there's a concern about birds and planes, but you know, in fact, most of the birds that cause problems for planes are larger birds like gulls and geese. Geese, in fact, love lawns and they eat prairies. And I think that the kinds of small birds we're talking about are not going to have much of an impact when it comes to plane safety. And as you probably heard, there have been recent studies that we've lost 1 in 4 birds since the 70s. And we just really hope that you will save the Bell Bowl Prairie.
We'll move on to resolutions and ordinances. Commissioner Shablaski.
Motion to approve resolution 22-03, approving an advertising agreement with WQDO, Fox 39, and State Line Digital for a 2-month television and digital campaign for $35,650.
Second. I have a motion and second. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The resolution passes.
Motion to approve resolution 22-04,